Welcome, guys. Chris Lato at UAP Society. Today, I have an exciting interview with Frank from UFO Thinker podcast. It's actually one of my favorite UFO podcasts, one of the few I actually listen to, and I learn a ton from Frank. Very happy to have him on the channel. I invited him to UAP Society YouTube to really talk through current events and get his initial impressions just on NFTs in general to see what he thinks of them. So without further ado, let's have Frank on from UFO Thinker Podcast. Welcome.
How's it going, Chris? You okay?
Yeah, I'm great, man.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, welcome. So you are originally Scottish, though, right? I saw on your Twitter that you're in Manchester, England. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have a bit of a complex family history, actually. I'm sure you don't want to know the full detail, but some of my dad's side of the family are actually Scottish. My mum's side are actually Irish. Not really got much English blood in me, but obviously quite patriotic in general. Being from the UK. But yeah, I'm a bit of a mongrel, really. I'm from all over the place in terms of my origins. But
but your accent is mainly Scottish, right? I mean,
no, I'm very much like kind of a Manchester Bolton hybrid. My accent, so it's probably a little bit.
All the Scottish people out there are like, no.
I can do a reasonably decent Scottish accent, but I think I'll save that one for another day, perhaps.
Oh, sorry, man. Oh, so bad. Awesome.
That's
all right.
Yeah, that's all good though, man. My accent is a bit of an unusual one, so for people outside of the UK, it's probably quite difficult to pin down. I do get a lot of messages about my accent, and yeah, it's a bit of an unusual, unique one, I think.
Yeah, that'll be the last time I try and guess at someone's accent on the air. Yeah, so welcome. So I guess let's get right into it. I guess the first thing that's been really exciting, and I think we know all the people kind of involved here is on. Sorry about that. Is on the Calvine. So this Calvine exciting stuff that just came out. I listened to your last podcast. You basically your podcasts are awesome. I listened to your last. It was 2 ago. You had one recently on crop circles. I want to check out. But the last one you talked about Calvine, Nolan, and then basic updates. So I guess what is your general take on Calvine? What are you thinking right now? Just at this point, what is your impressions of this event?
Well, yeah, it is a very complicated picture, I think, around the Calvine case. I think, as you said, when I did the roundtable recently with the various people on, presumably that's the one that you'd listen to. I think there was 5 of us on that roundtable, and we pretty much all had completely different conclusions as to actually what the thing is. It's really fascinating. Obviously, it's been a kind of a mythical image for so long that it's actually quite a shock to finally see the real deal, the actual image. There's been obviously that the line drawing, and there was a negative and things, but now we've actually got there you go, that's the line drawing right there, and to actually see the image itself is I never thought we'd see it, to be quite honest. So really interesting. There's obviously, when it came out, UAP Media kind of broke the story, and there was a bit of a storm online of various different hypotheses. It was like the Royal Rumble of hypotheses was the way I was putting it. It's just like everybody had an idea about what it was, and it varied from reflection of a rock in a lake, to I saw one of them that was like, somebody said it could be a Christmas tree star suspended on a wire, as a hoax kind of thing. And then obviously you've got like the most exciting possibility is that it's some kind of non-human technology, or one of the more popular kind of explanations is that it might be some kind of black budget technology, potentially UK or US, or a combination of the two. There's so many different explanations. I think one of the first things that hit me actually is, see that one that's on the screen just now. I think that's the recreation, isn't it? The one that had been
Yeah.
put forward as I think Nick Pope had something to do with bringing that one forward in conjunction with an artist, and it was a recreation of with the lack of the actual image being available. That was the recreation. One of the first things that struck me about the image when it came out was how similar it actually is,
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
the recreation. There's a striking resemblance there. If you put them side by side to somebody who's not aware of the nuance, they'd probably be like, it's the same picture. The main difference, obviously, being the landscape in the background, but you've got that weird little kind of bobbly bit on the what looks like it's the
Yeah.
rear, yeah. Which is, again, you can see that in the original image, but it's not exactly as clear as in the recreation. But yeah, I mean, that was my initial kind of thoughts. It's very strikingly similar to the recreations that had been out in the past. But when you start to really to dig into it, I think the overall kind of conclusion that I came to was that it's actually missing quite a few key things. Like, we don't have witnesses coming forward here who took the photograph. There's the rumored other images. I think there's supposed to be another 5 pictures. There were 6 taken in total.
I've heard that you can find them, though, that they're actually somewhere
apparently,
online, or
yeah.
there's purported other images. It shows a second area.
Apparently so. I've heard that the other images are actually quite similar in terms of, it's not as though like the thing has like done some kind of extraordinary movement or something. Apparently the diamond is in the same place, and the main difference between the other images is just the jet moves. You can imagine, obviously, if as the jet's going along, you would take multiple pictures. But I think the main thing is this, unfortunately at the moment, all of the bigger picture information is not there. I mean, there's a lot there, and the image itself is super compelling. But without, like, imagine, for example, if the pilot who was flying that jet came forward, that would be a game changer for the case, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So, but with what is available, my kind of conclusions are, it's quite a high possibility of it being something very unusual, maybe even some kind of non-human technology. But I would leave on the possibility of some kind of black budget tech as well. I've heard a lot of people, really kind of strenuously denying that the US has anything like that and all the rest of it, and the same with the UK. But then on the other hand, I've also heard some pretty compelling arguments as to why it could be black budget tech.
Yeah, it seems the reaction from the US, and the UK, I guess, is kind of interesting. If this is nothing, if it had no traction anywhere, then why did it make such a fuss over in the US? Was it just completely a miscommunication, or is it just diamond shaped craft? I think that's what they asked. Is this a diamond? Do you have any diamond shaped secret aircraft? And of course we had the F-117 then. That would have been, that could be construed as diamond. So I think maybe that could have been misconstrued by the US. When the UK asked, do you have any diamond shaped aircraft? They could look and say, well, that's a pretty vague question, I think. So maybe that caused it, or maybe there is some other black budget tech, and that's why they were so sensitive to it.
Yeah, another hypothesis that I've kind of not really heard anybody else talking about, but it's like a kind of hypothesis of my own invention, if you will, is some kind of what I call it, like a stealth zeppelin. So, like a lighter than air, I believe, is the military term. My friend DJ from Colin O'Beans, I've been talking to DJ about this, and apparently the term used in the military is lighter than air craft. So, in other words, like some kind of a balloon, zeppelin, dirigible, I believe they call it in the States. And potentially, if you wanted to create like a silent vehicle that could potentially, be used, deployed to drop bombs of whatever type, you would want that to be, I mean, first of all, the fact that it's silent is quite, useful if you were going to deploy a vehicle like that, and you would want it to be stealthy. And you would imagine that shape is sort of reminiscent a little bit of like stealth bombers and things. The angles. I thought perhaps that could be some kind of diamond shape, lighter than air vehicle. I mean, again, I'm not saying that this is definitely what it is or anything like that. It's just a hypothesis. And it also seems to tie in with the witness testimony. I think a lot of people end up kind of saying that it shot off at an unbelievable rate of speed. But I think actually, if you look carefully at the wording of the witness testimony, it actually says that it travels vertically at a relatively high rate of speed, or something like along the lines of that. So what does that actually mean? And for somebody perhaps who's not really an expert in aviation, that could mean a lot of things, couldn't it? Relative to what? Relative to the speed of a rocket, relative to the speed of something drifting very slowly. So I think if you imagine like some kind of lighter than aircraft, maybe tethered, and then those tethers are released, it would rise upwards, which you could describe as a relatively high rate of speed, depending on how fast it rose up. So, as I say, I'm not saying that that's what it definitely is, but I think one of the arguments against it being black budget tech is it doesn't really look like a conventional aircraft, but it could look like some kind of experimental stealth air balloon or something. As I say, that's my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I can consider as well, because if you go by any of the testimony, it's silent and it's hovering there, which adds a lot of stealth, actually. For us, like for fighter aircraft, it's really hard to find helicopters to actually lock them because they're so slow, because the motion, if nothing moves, it looks very much like the background. So that's why it's so hard, really, to detect any of these things off the East Coast, off the West Coast. If it just sits there, nothing really just sits there without moving, that we know about anyway. So all of our systems are designed really to track movement. It's the easiest way to catch things. Like your eyes, when something moves, you can pick it up right away, right? Because you see the difference. Same thing, I think, with radar. So yeah, if you had like a blimp that could just sit there, it would be quite stealthy. That would be quite. It would be difficult to pick up. I think a lot harder than people understand. They're like, why don't the fighter pilots, how come they can't identify it as a balloon, right? But if you imagine you're trying to actually just identify and track a balloon, that's not really moving, it's just moving with the air, doesn't really reflect anything, doesn't really reflect, light that well. Maybe it reflects off the sun, etc. So it's a lot harder than it sounds. I think people don't understand. That's probably the best black tech argument that I've heard, is that it's some sort of weird dirigible. Maybe it was up high and it had some emergency, so it had to come down lower, and now it worked their emergency and now could go back up, or something like some of that nature.
Yes, I mean, still the only thing I could come up with really that makes sense as a black tech argument, because I mean the only other thing would be that it's some kind of black budget tech or whatever that uses some kind of tic tac propulsion system, which again, is possible, but without having, more witness testimony and perhaps radar returns. I suppose whether it would have even been picked up, it is questionable, like you said. But yeah, I mean, because it doesn't seem to be some kind of a conventional aircraft, does it? I mean, it's again hard to tell from the angle, but it doesn't appear to have wings. So the only thing I could think of is some kind of dirigible type of stealth Zeppelin, as I call it, just because I'm a fan of Led Zeppelin, so I prefer the Zeppelin term. So yeah, some kind of stealth Zeppelin type thing, or I guess the tic tac propulsion system thing would apply, but it's difficult to come to that conclusion with the evidence that we've got available. Or obviously, we could be looking at a genuine, pretty clear picture of a non-human piece of technology, which is obviously the most exciting possibility. But as I say, again, hard to come to that conclusion definitively with what's available. But I would say I've spoken to a few of the guys from UAP Media. I kind of know them fairly well, and I know that they do have some other leads that they're currently pursuing as well. So whether or not, hopefully we'll see some more information, come available, whether that be witness testimony or one of the other photographs, like you said, they could still be out there. And with a bit more of that big picture data, we could actually come to a bit more of a firm conclusion, I think. But it's certainly a fascinating picture, isn't it?
Yeah, and I guess people say diamond shaped, but for me, this is what I would imagine a saucer looks like from the side.
Mm. Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
a good point. Yeah.
so if I was when I first saw it, I thought, man, it looks like a flying saucer just from the side. That was my initial impression. But then you get from the drawings, the line drawing, I don't know, it kind of made it look like there's like a seam here or something. So it's not a saucer shaped. Maybe it is in there now that I look a little closer. So you think the reflection theory is totally dead?
Well, I have looked at that, and to be honest, it was one of the hypotheses that I thought was perhaps more likely.
Yeah.
But I just think some of the more compelling arguments against that I looked into was the thing of the way that reflections work. I mean, I'm no like photography expert or reflection expert or whatever, but apparently the way that reflections work is the dimensions of like the top part and the bottom part are generally a specific ratio in reflections, and apparently this doesn't actually add up to what you would expect if it was a reflection. Also, the fact that the clouds as well. I've seen a few images that people have done of the clouds, and in a reflection, which way around would this be? Let me just think. So, like if you're actually looking at the clouds, you would see the light obviously shining from above, so that the clouds themselves would be lit from above and then darker underneath. And if you were looking at a reflection, that would be a mirror image. And I saw a few analyzed like enhanced versions of the image, which suggested that the light was actually coming from above, which kind of points towards it not being a reflection. But then again, I do know some other people who are very, credible researchers who are pursuing the reflection theory and trying to locate some of the bodies of water nearby to try and find a rock that might resemble that. And if they manage to find a rock that looks exactly like that and create a recreation of the image, then obviously the reflection hypothesis will look a bit more likely.
Yeah, I guess the best photographic evidence I saw was on Vinny's channel. I have it cut. I maybe make a video about it next week, etc. But was talking about the background. Because what you can tell is what the photo analysis said was basically this is in focus, or the most in focus object of that scene. So that would also rule out the reflection theory, right? Because if this is in the most focus, then you have this will be near, and then that would be further away, right? And sorry, this will be near, and the mountains in the background, you see, if this is mountains terrain, then that would be in the background. So you would have the fence in the near ground, the mountains in the background, and then this would have to be in between. So that would further out, because if it was closer, right? If you're taking a picture and you were focusing on the object in the lock or whatever in the water, then it would be closer than the fence. So
yes, it's a good point, and I think one of the great things about the way that the UAP media guys actually brought this case forward, or brought the actual the image forward, because the case has been around for a long time, but they actually included a pretty detailed analysis by a senior lecturer in photography who basically was able to rule out that the film had been tampered with, or the image itself had been overlaid on top of an existing photograph and then retaken. So all of that was ruled out. And he did seem, as part of his analysis, he did seem convinced that in terms of this, the locations within the frame sort of thing, like you say, the fence is the closest, the diamond-shaped object is in the mid, and then the jet is furthest away. Which again doesn't suggest what you would expect from a reflection.
Yeah, he went with it, but then some people said that you have the hills here. This could be just some string hanging from the fence. It's really not background. So there's a lot of
Exactly. Yeah, this is like I say, I think this is the abundance of different ideas. I think is kind of born out of the fact that we are missing some key parts of the puzzle with this
Mm,
particular case. It's like when
yeah.
you look at something like my old favorite, the Tic Tac, the Nimitz case. We've got so many different data points there. We've got radar operators, we've got people who saw it from multiple different jets and all the rest of it, and having all of those witnesses. The video is arguably kind of not very clear compared to this image, for example, but it's all of that background information that really gives the case so much weight. And in this case, the image itself is fantastic, but we've not really got many other points of data around it, and that's why I'm really hoping that some more will become available as we go along, because it will give us a lot better idea to make that firm conclusion. At the minute, it's a kind of fertile ground for different hypotheses, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. No, I think it's cool to see the investigation kind of happening real time on all these different YouTube channels, Twitter, people talking about it. And then hopefully those, the witnesses maybe will turn up, they'll find that other information, right? We found this data. So maybe we can find some more data.
Definitely. I think it's great as well. Sometimes Twitter can be not necessarily the most positive place, but in this case, actually, for the most part, it was quite constructive. Everyone's throwing their sort of hat in the ring with different hypotheses, and like I say, that's kind of how it should be, really. That's the scientific way of doing things, isn't it? You put forward all kinds of different hypotheses, and then all of these various ideas and explanations battle it out until one comes out on top, sort of thing. That's a good thing. It's sort of crowdsourcing of the investigation.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. And, I go to Metabunk, and to see what their arguments are, to see what's coming from the other end of the spectrum, I consider it. But yeah, excellent arguments. All right, cool. Well, let's move on. I am excited about Calvin. Hopefully we get more of that, like we said, in the future. But so I wanted to talk about kind of something weird. First, this is our UAP Society YouTube, and then I think you mentioned on your podcast Patrick Jackson.
Yeah.
I think yeah. So I was just watching. He has a YouTube channel. I know he has a book. Not many subscribers, but he had this interesting video here. It's a Type 2 sphere, and I'll just turn the volume down. So he has this kind of theory, right, that these spheres are basically alien probes doing something, right? And this is infrared. He says there's like a covert. Again, I'm no expert on his theory. I've looked through his books, but basically, you have a covert kind of IR sphere here, and then he has supposedly a video of a metal sphere here. Only because I've also gotten other videos. Nigel Benton, he contacted me as well. This was last year, and I said, do you mind making a YouTube video? And he made one. He lives in the UK, and it's basically looks like a star during the day, and he films this thing, just sits there for I think 20 minutes, and then it disappeared, right? So I'm just curious, what is your take on these kind of ball sphere oriented Pokemon looking UAPs? Do you think it's a real thing, or do you think this is a hoaxed video? What's your take on this stuff?
I mean, I just don't know at the end of the day. But I mean, I think one thing that I know is that these things are seen quite commonly. I've actually spoken to a few people from the UK, particularly a friend of mine, Nick Gadman, who I actually met last year at a UFO event here in the UK. And Nick has seen these things multiple times, got videos of them, and what they are, I just don't know. But some of the videos that I've seen, they do some unusual movements that don't seem to tally with a balloon or something like that. Because obviously the initial explanation that many people would come up with for something like that is, it's a party balloon that's kind of blown away or something and it's floating around. But in some cases, these things do some very unusual movements, and they tend to be, the certain people seem to see them regularly, in some cases going on for a long, long time. Nick, for example, saw a black triangle object when he was younger, and then over the years, he's seen these spheres again and again, dozens of sightings of them, and in some cases associated with like other strange phenomena happening as well. So they're extremely interesting, and whether or not these actual metal spheres that are people have actually got on the ground are the same thing, or if it just resembles it, difficult to say. But again, that's why we need this, the proper analysis done of the material to see if there's anything truly anomalous going on there. But yeah, fascinating. What they actually are, hard to say.
Yeah, it reminds me too of like CE5 protocols, where people go outside and they're, whatever, meditate, but then they always see these or supposedly see these orbs, or some lights in the sky. We don't ever get better videos, it seems like, or I haven't seen any, but I don't know. I'm just curious if it's related, get your take on it. But
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of people. It's kind of pure speculation, really, at this point as to what they're actually doing. But the speculation that I have heard is that there's some kind of probe, and sometimes they are sighted in conjunction with things like triangular UFOs or disc-shaped UFOs, and then you can sometimes see them lit up. And you can sometimes see them not lit up, just having a metallic appearance like this. And yeah, the speculative kind of explanation is that they are some probe that is sent out from the main UFO. In some cases, the orbs and things associated with CE5 as well can actually merge together. One object can split into several objects, go into formations, go back together again. Again, it's difficult to verify any of this, but it does seem to be a pretty common occurrence.
That reminds me of the recent sighting over the West Coast there, basically with the airline pilot. He was a previous F-18 pilot, I believe.
Right, yeah, that's right. The one that Ben Hansen brought forward.
Yeah, exactly. I can't remember. I lost the name of it that they named it. I did see the interview though, but he mentions the same thing: is that they were basically flying in a Gulfstream, 47,000 feet, right, which is quite high. So that's higher than most airliners fly. And then they see above them what you mentioned, they're kind of lights rejoining together. So he said they were doing around rejoining, so yeah, just trying to add some sort of trying to, I guess, frame the problem. What are we looking at? What are these things flying around? Could they be related? Could it be linked? And then can we get some sort of actual analysis, investigation going on this stuff? So that's really why we. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, funnily enough, you mentioned earlier about the recent episode that I did about crop circles, and there's actually a quite an old video. I forget when it's from now. I think it's like 1999 or something like that. It's from quite some time ago, and there was actually like a crop circle group had gone to have a look at a circle that was in this particular field, and they managed to actually capture a video of a glowing orb type thing, which is actually floating around through a field. Cool. And it actually sort of goes into the crop and then comes back out of the crop again. It's not like seen to be making a crop circle or anything, but it's there in the proximity of where this circle was created, and actually goes over the top of a farmer's tractor. And they managed to track down the farmer at some time later as well, like a few months later. And he actually remembered the incident, and he said his tractor actually shut off completely at the moment that the orb went overhead. And there's video of that widely available as well. Quite interesting. Again, like you say, difficult to verify exactly what's going on there, but pretty interesting to consider.
Yeah, excellent. So just for the last part here, to get more data, that's really why we even started UAP Society. Just our last couple minutes. What is your take on NFTs, man? Anytime I say NFTs to my community, they just freak out and think I'm trying to literally just rob them or something. What's your take on crypto NFTs in general?
Yeah, well, I think it's a very new and emerging thing. I mean, I don't claim to be any expert in this, Chris, as you know a little bit already. Certainly no aficionado of the topic, but I think sometimes with new things, especially technology based, it takes a bit of people to adjust to it, doesn't it? And like Bitcoin and things like that back in the day, it was a bit people were a bit slow on the uptake, and then fast forward 5-10 years and all of a sudden everybody wishes they'd bought a few Bitcoins back in the day. And basically sort of my understanding of it is it's like unique art basically being sort of like used as a type of currency. Am I sort of on the right lines there? Or?
Yeah, that's exactly. Yep.
Yeah,
It's like a digital art ticket, that gives you membership and benefits. So if we get hopefully we can capture some meteors or show that it's possible. And then with any of the funds, basically give the money back to the NFT holders by buying the floor. There's kind of these ways you have to do it. It's going to look different to people, but yeah, that's basically it. It's verifiable digital assets. You're limiting digital, whereas before it was just free, right? It's now they find a way to make it rare. Of course, we had a free asset, digital free assets, and we made it rare through non-fungible tokens. Yeah, this is it's cool too because we have if I can see, yeah, like this one here. This is Carl. You know Carl Vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is his actual NFT. It's a space station. It's like a living space station. Yeah, cool. So he was super stoked. I was there I was with him when he actually got it. It was exciting. So it's you mentioned it. Basically, doesn't need to be crazy complex. It's just more exciting way to contribute or be a part of a community and invest. Really, is the idea. But
I
they
think
don't have to do that.
I think it's a really bold kind of move from you guys. Embracing this new. This new sort of technology, I guess you'd call it, and using that to help kind of, instigate and fund like research into UAP. It's hats off to you, really. Because you're embracing like a kind of a new frontier, and it'll be exciting to see where it all goes.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. Like you said, it looks different. Yeah, the technology is different. It looks funny, I'm sure like when email came out, everybody was like, this is stupid, like electronic email, electronic mail. Actually, I was there and that's what people said. And of course now it's changed everything, and so, yeah, we go on Discord. This is how we work together, communicate and organize. So yeah, that's the idea, and glad to have you here. Thanks for participating in our UAP Society YouTube. Come and give us an update on Calvin and your take on this, on the metal spheres. It's good. I think we should all be skeptical, but I'm obviously hoping that, it's more exciting.
Yeah, I try and remain skeptical, but also cautiously optimistic as well, and yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how the investigation into that sphere particularly progresses, and I suppose also with the Calvin thing as well, as any more data becomes available. So yeah, thanks very much for having me, man. It's been a pleasure to chat to you as always.
Yeah, excellent. And then how can people find you? What's the best way?
Well, basically, social media wise, I'm sort of only on Twitter. I should probably get my acting gear and get an Instagram or something really as well. But yeah, Twitter is at UFO Thinker, and you can find my podcast on all the main sort of podcast streaming platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and that kind of thing, and pretty much anywhere you get a podcast.
Excellent. Yeah, I really enjoy it, man. Yeah, it's great. I love your delivery. It's so smooth. I can just listen to it casually in the car. It's great.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for all your work, man. And we'll see you again on UAP Society. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, anytime, man.
All right.